I had an idea, and we'll see how it works. I just recently did an embroidery of my dog, Teddy, and I wanted to try to come up with a way that doesn't require you to know how to draw. So this is my friend Sandy's dog, Toby, and what I did is I ironed a piece of muslin onto freezer paper, and I ran that through my inkjet printer to get an image. Now that just comes right off, and now I have regular fabric that I can do the embroidery over. The problem here is it'll never stay in my hoop. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to sew extra fabric around the edges so that I've got some more leeway that I'll be able to hold this in the hoop. And then I will get started with doing a little embroidery of Toby and seeing how that works. Now the thing is, this is not something that you could do printing just regular printing on regular fabric. You don't really want to try that with anything that you're worried about it washing out, but I don't care. The embroidery thread is going to become the color, and then after it's done I'll rinse it. All this inkjet print ink will probably just all wash out, but it won't matter because I'll have the whole design done in thread. So that what I'm hoping here is that this procedure will save you from having to be able to draw the picture. You'll just be able to fill it in with your thread and sort of follow the lines, if that makes sense. So we'll see how it works. I'm going to go sew some fabric around the edges, then I'll get it in the hoop and I'll show you what happens. I got it in the hoop. You want to make sure that you've got that in there just as tight as you can get it. Now some people will wrap the hoop with fabric with the idea that that makes it grip better and keeps the fabric from slipping. I may try that myself. What I've done is I've done some basic outline stitching to sort of get the shape in there. It's time to switch to a different thread. So on this machine the thread goes through, and it probably is not going to show on this camera, but anyway, so it goes through this little notch here, and it comes down to the thread tension deal here, and that just hooks in like that. Then it comes up to the arm, and there's a little notch in that. Then it's going to go down. There's a loop there that catches the thread and keeps it close to the needle, and then we thread it, and if we're lucky we get it to go in. So I have a bazillion different colors that are going to go in this, and all of them are going to create the variation in color that gives it texture and makes it look more realistic. You know, I could look at it and say, well, I'll just do it all one color because it looks very, very similar. But you really need to get it to look natural. You're going to be better with a good variety of thread colors. For some reason, my bottom thread doesn't want to come up. There we go. You'll want to be careful as you work, but you'll get much better results if you learn to work with your fingers holding that fabric down real well. Had a lot of people say, oh, you're too close, be careful. I've had a needle through my finger before. And I appreciate the concern, but as slow as this is going, I have a hard time imagining that I could do that. When you're running an electric machine, that probably could easily happen. I don't know if you can tell how slow I'm really going. But it's pretty slow. And one of the things that's probably harder to tell on camera, because it's frankly hard to tell for me while I'm doing this light that I have on here was my attempt at making you be able to see this on camera. Well, it's creating a good deal of glare, and so it's probably a little harder for you to see the variation in the thread colors, because I know it's harder for me to see it, but believe me, it's there. The first thread that I had in before I started this this thread, all of that's kind of a taupey color, and this that I'm doing now is more of a cream color. Now the advantage that I have here is I know the dog. Toby is not as gray as this picture. He's really kind of a much more tan, blonde. It's a different color than it's showing here. So I'm going to give it my best attempt to make the colors turn out more like what I know him to really be, not the way it's printed on the fabric. Now the one I did of Teddy, I'll try and put a link to that at the end of the video. I didn't think to do a video portion when I was doing him. Anyway, when I did Teddy, you know, I had him right here, and I could draw him myself, and if I had any doubts as to whether or not it was looking right, I could just look at him. Got a different situation here, so that's why I wanted to try this, to see how good of a job I could do without having the subject at hand. You know, pets our pets are very personal to us, and we can see in their eyes and in their expression, we can see their whole personality and everything about them. And so it's very difficult to do justice to recreating an accurate image of someone's pet if you're not really familiar with them. At least that's my personal belief. I know there are artists who specialize in pet portraiture, and there's some really good ones, but not being one myself, I think it's got to be a pretty difficult task. Now, what I do know from my previous life as a wannabe artist, the other thing that really makes an animal or person picture come to life are the eyes. And once I get those in, I'll feel better about whether or not he's going to look right. I'm liking the colors I'm getting so far. He's darker in through here, so I'll definitely have to change to a darker thread here. And then over here where it's really gray, I'm going to use it more of a tan color. I'll probably use quite a bit of this through here, even though, again, it looks gray in the picture. He's really not gray. I'll use some of this darker brown in through here. Also, somebody asked me what kind of thread I'm using. This happens to be Coates & Clark, and it is 40 weight trilobal polyester. It's got a nice sheen to it. It's got a good, I like the thickness. It feels pretty good to me. I was also using, in a previous project, I was doing roses, and I was using this Floriani, and it is, well, I don't have the label anymore, but it's a finer thread. It's sewed fine, but it's not as thick. I've got others too, different sizes, but and different brands. They all seem to work about the same if they're this basic machine embroidery polyester thread. Now, when they used to do this 100 years ago, and they did it the exact same way without the aid of a computer printout to make the image first, they would actually just sketch it out on the fabric. But that procedure for doing machine embroidery existed as soon as people had sewing machines. And this is how they did it. They would use primarily silk thread. And I imagine this would be beautiful done in silk. I just don't want to pay for it. So I haven't tried silk. But it seems to me it would work fine. The other thing of note is my bobbin. I have my bobbin right now with a white thread, and it's about the same weight thread as what I have in the top. However, the spool that I'm using, that I used for the bobbin thread, didn't have a label on it, so I can't tell you for sure what it was. If I had to pick a preferred bobbin thread, I like something for this based on what I've done so far. And again, I'm not an expert. I haven't done this that much. But based on what I have done, if I were to pick a bobbin thread that works for me, it would be one that is slightly finer in weight to what I'm using for the top. So a thinner, less, a finer weight. If I'm using 40 weight on the top, I might use a 50 in the bobbin, or a 60 even. Now what I'm doing here is I'm trying, again, going really slow, just one stitch in each time I move. I'm moving the needle back and forth, just a little bit at a time. What I'm trying to do is get a good amount of stitching around that eye so I can get the overall shape and size of that thing, even though it's printed on there from the computer. I want to get that really defined so that when I am ready to do the thread portion of that I've got that outline. And there's a highlight there and there. Now these on the when you look at it, don't perhaps look as in real life. They're quite dark, but I'm going to do those in white. That's really going to make it pop out and show up more. I have also got a chalk marking pencil. So as I go, if I want to draw some extra markings in here for my own guidance, I've got the ability to do that as I go. So what the plan here is to just keep moving along, slow and steady, and I can't emphasize enough how helpful it is to really go slow. Learn to make your treadle move at really slow speed so that you can get really good control of where your stitches go, how long they are, and the other thing to learn is really what to do with your hands, how much you need to move to get the stitching to do what you want. And you've got movement of your, you've got the movement of your hoop, movement of your needle, your foot, all of those things, and they happen all at once. So you've got to look at your needle as it goes in and out of the fabric. And as soon as it goes into one area, you're sort of envisioning how far you have to move it to get into the next spot that you want it. So it's a matter of learning to control all your motions, not just your needle, but your foot, your hands, all the speed of everything that you're doing is all interconnected. So, and if you can see this. When I started outlining, I did just some relatively regular stitching, and you see they look like short regular stitches. Well, now that I'm doing the embroidery part, these stitches are quite a bit longer, and I'm going to try and do this in super slow-mo. So the needle comes up, the fabric moves, and then it goes down a good bit away from where it was. And that makes a stitch that has some length to it. It makes it more like an embroidery stitch, or like a satin stitch, rather than just a whole bunch of a million straight stitches running next to each other. And I hope that makes sense, and I hope it shows, because that's the hard part to get. The longer embroidery kind of stitches that go into this is part of what makes the texture, the changes the sheen of the thread, so you get reflection. So it's, and the other thing is, as you're going, a good bit of this is really about the direction of your threads. So I'm following the directions of the curves and the tendrils and or the wisps of hair. I want the thread to go that way. So just because the shape is defined here, and you don't want to just fill it in, I wouldn't make my thread go this way. That would look contrary to the way his fur would really grow. So a lot of what you're doing is creating a flow for your eye to follow based on the direction of the threads. And again, don't be in a rush to make this all fill in 10 seconds. You won't like it. If you go too fast, what you're going to get is tugging, pulling, the fabric will pucker, and you won't get the look on the stitches that you really wanted anyway. It might be done, but it won't be done well, and it really does make a difference. So this is one of those where a lot of practice is required, I think. Every one of these embroidery projects that I start, I learn something, and I get better, and I get more control, and that's just from practice, and that's practicing your foot control and your hand control and all of that, and that just makes a huge difference. So, I was reading over an old manual for machine embroidery that was put out in the late teens, I think, 1915, 1916, something like that. It might have been later, it might have been 1920. Anyway, it was put out by Singer for machine embroidery on your Treadle machine. And being the kind of person who is instruction impaired, I've often said I'm a great teacher and a horrible student. because once I figure something out, I can usually explain how to do it, but I'm really bad at having somebody else tell me how to do something. It's just because that's the way I am, I guess. Anyway, it turns out, or the book said that before you start any embroidery projects, that you should put some fabric in the hoop and practice making straight lines. And then you should practice trying to make, that you should sew two straight lines and try to fill embroidery style between the two. And when you can start to get that to happen nice and even and make it look pretty, then it's time that you can start to move on to doing some real embroidery. Well, of course, I didn't do that. But looking back, I think that was probably really good advice. And I would have benefited from it, but I have no patience for that. I want to get right to the fun part. Practicing straight lines isn't fun. It sounded a lot too much like the nuns teaching me how to write. When you have to copy numbers and letters and make the swirls on the page and everything. So anyway, having said all that, you don't always have to do what I do, and what they said, to make a practice piece of fabric and do lots of stitching to learn how to control your needle speed and everything, was probably a great idea, and it probably would have saved me making several complete projects that, as it turns out, aren't nearly as good as I thought they were when I first finished them. So, you decide how you want to proceed with your own project. I don't know if I mentioned the setup here. This is a white rotary treadle machine. This machine takes this style bobbin, and I took the feed dogs out. That makes the, because these old machines you couldn't lower them, so I just removed the feed dogs. I'm liking this one so much for embroidery that I may just leave the feed dogs out and just only use it for embroidery. It's not like I have a shortage of machines. I've got probably 30 others. The other thing that I'm using is I've got one of these, I don't know if it shows here, but this is underneath the work. This is one of those silicone mats that helps the material slide. I don't really need it, except for there's two spots on here on my machine. I don't know if I can get them in the picture. Here and up here, and one below. And every time I'm moving it around and the hoop comes into contact with one of those, it makes my hoop get jammed, and then I can't see what I'm doing. I can't see what I'm doing. I can't keep moving the hoop because it gets jammed on the hinge there, and it sort of acts like a bumper. So that's what that mat does for me. It covers that up. So you could probably use any number of other things to achieve the same function. What I use that silicone mat mostly for when I'm machine quilting, and it does help the quilt to slide better. I imagine if I had just covered the hinges there with a piece of tape, that would also have helped the fabric from, or the edge of the hoop from getting caught up on it, and that would have worked as well. Okay, I'm going to get moving along here. So, the other thing I have determined for myself, and again, this is probably up to personal preference. I get a little bit done, and even though I've probably got a bunch more that I want to fill in with this particular color thread, I start to get to a point where I think, well, it's time, I want to switch to a different color, and rather than try to fill in everything that I'm going to do with this before I change, I kind of like to switch over to a different thread to keep. Well, it helps me to sort of get a better idea of where I'm going. If I try to do everything this way, I may in fact end up filling too much of it with that color and not leave enough space for a different color. So I'm going to use plain white through here and up in here, and then I'm going to use a little bit of a different color here. So it's helpful, I think, to start changing the thread periodically as I go, so I don't get carried away and fill too much with one particular color, and then have to go over it. It's harder, I find anyway. It's harder to get it to come out nice when I'm trying to pile thread on top of thread on top of thread. So anyway, I'm at the thread change point for me right now. I don't know if you can see the back. I've got white bobbin thread in there. So I'm going to change thread. I'll do a little more stitching. Then I will probably be several more hours in making this happen, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I'll come back with a part 2 video to show you what happens, and how this idea of using the computer printout worked. It's getting late. I can't get my needle threaded, so maybe that's an indicator for me that it's time to stop. There we go. Oh, one other thing. I've mentioned it before in other things that I've been showing, but it bears repeating because I did it earlier today and couldn't figure out what in the heck I was doing wrong. When we do treadle embroidery, the foot is removed, so you don't have a presser foot, but you still have to lower the presser bar. That is what engages the tension discs and makes your thread tension work. So earlier, when I first started this, I was stitching away thinking, boy, that machine sounds weird. Those stitches look really loose. What's wrong? What was wrong was I didn't have the foot down, or the presser bar down, and I was getting the biggest knotted thread mess on the back you can imagine. I didn't show you that, but maybe I should have, because it'll show you why you don't want to do that. You would think, after doing that a few times, I would have learned my lesson, but it seems that at least a couple of times on every embroidery project I do, I forget to put the presser bar down and I make a tangled mess. Now, I don't know if what that says about my ability to learn from my mistakes, but there you have it. I think I just get too excited and forget to do it, because you're not, when the presser bar's not down, it's really hard to notice the difference visually. It's just that your stitches start turning out weird and you know something's wrong. Now, when I do the eyes, I think I'm going to use probably 3 or more colors. Toby's got brown eyes, but they're also sort of blackish. So I think I'm going to use brown and dark, probably maybe 2 colors. I've got a really dark brown that's almost black, and I've got another sort of a medium brown. So I'm thinking this brown around the outside, the darker brown in the middle, and then white for the highlights. So I'm going to have a lot of thread changes to do. I intend to frame this, so it's not going to be something that's going to need to be able to go in the wash. So I have just been cutting off my threads. Now, if I wanted this to be more of a permanent washable type item, what I would probably do is leave those thread tails really long, then thread them onto a needle and push them through to the back, and then bury them in to the extra threads the way you would finish off if you were doing hand embroidery. But I don't think they're going to go anywhere, since this is going to probably, like I said, if it turns out, I'm going to put it in a little frame and put it under glass, and I don't see how those threads could go anywhere if I just cut them off like that. So that's that. Anyway, I think you can see where it's going, and like I said, I'm going to do a whole bunch more, and then I'll come back and show you the next steps.